Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Good morning, hospitality listeners. It's your host, Wil Slickers, and I'm excited because this is a fun bonus episode that we got to sit down with Tim Rosolio at Vrbo. And guess what? Not only did we have a good conversation about the new cancellation policy and changes happening within Vrbo, but we have a special announcement for you, the listeners of Good Morning Hospitality. And that announcement is one, Thursday, October 19th was our 3-year anniversary of the podcast. And we could not be here without you guys. Everyone who has supported us, from listening to talking to us and interviewing with us at conferences, to our sponsors who are just amazing to work with. But on top of that, we have one really big milestone that we hit during this 3-year anniversary period. And that is this year of 2023, the show, Good Morning Hospitality as a whole, has hit over 1 million downloads for the year. 1 million downloads for a podcast that is surrounding hospitality industry news and topics that are trending is mind-blowing to us. And we're just so thankful that you guys really are here to support and to tune in. And you just really have made this journey so incredible. So if you want to learn more about our newsletter and other things that you can stay connected with me, the crew, and the hotel crew, all the above, then make sure you go to goodmorninghospitality.com, sign up for our newsletter, the GMC report, or the Good Morning Capital report is what it's called. And we would love to have you there. But thank you so much for tuning in. And now to this very special episode of Good Morning Hospitality with our special guest, Tim Rosolio at Vrbo.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, everybody. How we doing?
Good morning. Happy Wednesday.
On the day of the recording. Maybe happy Friday.
On the day of the recording. Yes. Best day of the week.
Yes. Awesome. Well, we're going to jump right in. Tim Rosolio, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you again. How you been, my friend?
Doing good. It's conference season, right? So busy. Was in Sydney and Singapore last week. My body's very confused about what time it is, but always will make time for you folks to talk about some of the changes that we made and why we're doing it, how we're going to do it, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Well, to give a
You're
Go
one
ahead,
of
Michael. I
our
was gonna say
only multiple timed guests on the show. We don't welcome back just anybody. So we're glad to have you back for being on. How many time zones you've been on in the past 2 weeks? You look really refreshed, Tim.
Ish. Yeah. Well, it's an honor to be on again.
Tim, to give a recap for all the listeners, you're the Vice President of Vacation Rental Partner Success at Expedia Group, aka in Vrbo. And we recently saw the changes on cancellation policies, hence why we're here today. So we're going to throw some questions at you. We did, prepare this prior to the recording, obviously, to make sure we weren't throwing any grenades over to Tim last minute. But Michael, I would love to have you kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you roll out any new policy, there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of people jumping to the worst case conclusions. So really, we want a chance to get to the bottom of it and really understand why Expedia Vrbo made this decision, what's the goal of it, and how it can actually benefit hosts as well. So I guess, can you jump into confirming that any cancellation from 30 days out will have a fee of 10% with at least a minimum of a $50 fee going to Expedia Vrbo?
Yeah. And maybe before I dive specifically into the question, first of all, it is great to be on, and it is great to use forums like these. You guys are a voice of the industry so that we can really help drive clarity on this, which is great. So thanks for having me on. And it's also worth noting that I think we made a variety of changes. It wasn't specifically just a change surrounding host cancellation fees. We made a series of changes that were very much focused on traveler experience, because we believe that sort of when the traveler wins, we all win. And some of the traveler pain points have been surrounding getting declined bookings when they try to make booking requests, or in fact, if booking requests are accepted, you get cancellations. So it's probably worth outlining that there's really three things we did. So the first thing we did is we changed the premier host criteria and really raised the bar of what it means to be a premier host in terms of review scores, host cancellations, and acceptance rate. And I think the impact of that will be more scarcity to that badging and that program, which will mean for the folks that stay within that program, you're going to get more demand than ever. And for those of you that don't, with your dedicated account manager, we're prepared to have really deep conversations with you about like, hey, it looks like it's this pocket of inventory that's your problem area for reviews, or it's this pocket of inventory that's your problem area for cancellations, for example. So that's number one. Number two, of course, is the host cancellation policy. It's a fee. It's just to drive clarity, sort of the fee is more severe based upon traveler pain, which is generally related to how close to the stay date you are. So, not all cancellations are created equal. We all hear the horror story of, you made your booking 6 months ago, you're about to check into the place, it's canceled, that's the worst. And then there's other ones that are more benign, but still bad, which is, you made the booking, it's 6 months out, but a week later you get a cancellation. Also not the best traveler experience. And then the third thing that might be a little more under the radar is with all of the supply that's flowing onto the market, we've taken a look at our entire portfolio of supply and really looked at partners that we kind of say, like, I don't know, like you're canceling X% of the time, you're having issues with cleaning X% of the time, you're not accepting X% of the time. And we have reached out to a lot of them and told them that we're no longer going to work with them. So those three things in package, I think, are about raising the traveler experience. And I wish I could tell you how many people we've kicked off the site. They're mostly individual owners, not property managers. But I think PR and investor relations would zap me with a shop collar for saying so.
So I think we're all in agreement that getting rid of bad actors is ultimately a good thing for the industry. But that second scenario that you gave us of the worst case scenario for a guest, couldn't agree more. The worst case scenario is a cancellation when you're on your flight, or maybe walking into an absolute dump of a property that was a complete lie. But how frequent did that actually happen? Because, in 10 years of being in the industry, I've actually never even heard of kind of that last minute worst case scenario. Certainly had the issues where people sell their house and 30 days out, you're like, you have to rebook because someone else owns this house now. But, the 1 day out, 1 week out, how often was that?
Public company stuff here, probably not at liberty to give you the data, but I can assure you that it does happen. And when in fact it happens, I can assure you that those people never return to the short-term rental category. So that's kind of the spirit of what we're doing here. I think that's probably all I can say. No data provided.
Fair enough. So I think from the operator perspective, where we just dig into the nitty gritty is, so Michael mentioned an example, let's say 6 months out, the building sells, or our agreement isn't renewed, we cancel with plenty of time. I think that where people find there's a little bit of tension is still, if we refund everyone, still being charged for that cancellation, so I guess having a list of what is an acceptable fee-free cancellation would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. And I certainly appreciate that. As we listen, before we rolled this out, and then over the past few weeks at conferences, we've had lots of conversations with partners to try to understand, like, so how's this going to work for you? There's generally 3 insights that I found. So first of all, like, I would say that the good news is operators generally understand the spirit of why we're doing it. However, like, they also are saying, like, I don't know, you're charging me for something you didn't charge me for in the past. I don't necessarily love that, and I can appreciate that. That's the first thing. The second one is they really want to understand, like, okay, so what do I get waived? And, I don't know if on this call we want to go through like every single reason, but I'm happy to speak to a couple of them. Like, if in fact the example that you talk about happens, like you have somebody that leaves your portfolio, that is waivable if in fact you take the right next steps to really remove it from our platform, because we understand that happens. And that's really something, it's something that happens in the industry. Other examples would be they're breaking your house rules. Other examples would be like, this looks like it's fraud. Other examples would be like, there's this disaster last minute. Like, if there's a pipe that bursts or air conditioning goes out, I don't want a traveler staying there either. And it's not your fault to either. Another example would be like, I don't know, occasionally there's a technology glitch. Sometimes that's our fault. And when that happens, we're obviously not going to penalize you for that. So there are these waiver reasons that are all available that we'd be happy to send out to you to share with all of the listeners. For the most part, to the extent that these things are unpreventable, out of your control, we got you. Then the last concern, which I also found super valid, is like, okay, so I'm glad you got these waivers. I don't want this to be too much of a pain in the butt for me to process them. So right now we still are in the state of, you're going to need to place a phone call to do it, but the intent is to build a portal to make this much more self-service and seamless for you.
Great. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's really where, like, we want to be good operators. We want to provide a good guest experience. And I think that the kind of knee-jerk reaction that I know I had, and I think other operators had, is like, well, all of these, like, what if there's fraud? What if there's all these things? Like, am I going to have to spend 5 hours on the phone? Like, you just immediately start thinking about how, like, this is going to operationally kind of bottleneck you a little bit. So glad to hear, like, a portal, that'll be great, something kind of seamless, and knowing that, for kind of things outside of our control, that we'll be able to kind of have a process to handle it. So, and I get it. I mean, the people that are canceling last minute or being discriminatory or whatever they're doing that are creating that bad guest experience, we obviously, those aren't operators that we want on the platform either.
Yeah, and we don't take this lightly. I mean, that's why we talk to partners prior to rolling these things out. This is why we talk to partners after we roll it out to understand the pain points. And despite the fact that this is something where we're charging a partner, we do believe that it's the right thing to do for a two-sided marketplace. And we're going to listen to you as part of that two-sided marketplace decision.
Yeah, I like that. And obviously, like you said, you can't really provide the data, public company stuff, all the X, Y, and Z things, right? But there must have been a certain volume on your guys' end. You must have been like, okay, this is becoming an issue. Obviously, it's coming up over and over time again. So that makes sense. I'm curious on when this kind of penalty or, fee happens for cancellation. I know for us specifically, we have a property management platform or software. So we have to connect through you guys with that. And then also we have Stripe as our payment processor. So when it comes to the penalty and the fee and the kind of the back end nitty gritty, are you guys charging that to the operator up front, back end? Like, are you sending out an invoice? What does that look like when that actually does happen and the waiver doesn't go through, or it wasn't a proper cancellation on your guys' end?
So first of all, just to provide the detail in terms of timeline, you have 45 days to process a waiver, and the process to actually pay is we send you an invoice, you pay with credit card. There's probably the intent in the long term to potentially make that more seamless, where perhaps we would net it out of the next payment, and that's one less activity that you need to do. But right now, you're going to get an email. You're going to get the opportunity to make a payment.
Yeah, I think when I saw this, I was like, okay, so I'm paying the processing fee to process the reservation, to refund, and to process this penalty. It's like 3 times, but this makes sense. Being sent an invoice and then paying it separately, or taking it out of a payment batch is also a great idea. I think, one of the as a host, you kind of feel like sometimes we're getting like caged in a little bit, or there's constantly new things that we're having to adapt to, which is normal, but it does feel like sometimes a little bit of an uphill battle. And if you're planning out your budgets or things, and your processing fee could be a big part of that, but hopefully you're an operator that's not canceling last minute all the time, and this should be fairly negligible. And if you're canceling all the time, then maybe this will deter you.
Maybe they'll get the boot, from Vrbo. I'm curious, Tim, we're in conference season. This episode's going out right before VRMA, and you were at your guys' own conference, and I'm curious, you're mentioning, this is kind of off the script question, but you were mentioning you talked to partners prior to rolling out this stuff. What has the response and the conversation been at your guys' own conference, and as you're traveling around and having these actual in-person conversations with big operators and professional management companies?
I think the main thing is, the first message is generally, okay, I get it. And then the second part is, make it easy for me and make it fair.
Sounds about right.
Another interesting one we're throwing in there. I actually had this conversation at Astra in Australia last week, is we also understand, based on the way certain operators work, sometimes there's something that an underlying owner will do that really causes this. Like, so say there's an underlying owner that says like, oh, I forgot to tell you I'm staying there this weekend. In that use case, that's not the fault of the property management company. It's the fault of the individual owner. And in that use case, I would recommend that you incorporate into your contracts that you pass on some of your fees to them.
Yeah, the owner relations side is always fun.
Well, yeah, that's a big question. Our average daily rate at storied properties is like £4,000 or £5,000 a night. And so my big question is there a limit on the high side? You have a minimum threshold, but if we get a £20,000 booking and the owner decides to not take that, are we getting a £20,000 bill?
Well, so the short answer to that question is, yeah, you're getting the bill. The longer answer is, we should work together to try to understand, how do you work with the underlying property to make sure that they are showing truly accurate rates and availability. That is really what the traveler wants to see, so that this doesn't happen.
I really like your comment on adding it into your contracts. Like, I think that's a great way to protect yourself from kind of rogue owners. And it's like, okay, if you want to do that, but then you're responsible for 100% of the cost.
Yeah, it really comes down, I think, maybe on the operator side, the bigger challenge might be the last minute bookings and you forgetting to block the calendar or something like that, where it's more a calendar management issue. The 6 month out bookings, that's not really the problem for most operators that are doing it in good faith and wanting to actually get the bookings. So yeah, I think for us at Storied, I think that's something that we'll take back and think about on how we incorporate it.
Yeah, Michael, work with your account manager so that we can really talk about how we can help provide guidance on how to have that conversation with the owners.
Yeah, and actually, Brandy, it does happen. It wasn't through the Vrbo platform, but we had a £120,000 inquiry 10 days out.
Wow, that's amazing.
So,
You know what? I just want to go to a castle this weekend.
We're getting leads that are either 10 days out or a year out. Is basically like the people that book castles. So,
and Mike's next Good Morning Hospitality episode might be from like a yacht or something like that. I'm feeling good about what's happening at Storied.
Yeah.
Well, we got to do a live one.
I'm lobbying for a GMH retreat at a castle, like, pretty hard. We've been trying to get him to commit to it on air, but he won't do it.
Yeah, he won't.
I'm trying to be PR trained like Tim is and answer the question in a very diplomatic way.
I'll say this on the sense of, we do see a lot of changes happen on OTAs platforms all the time. And obviously you've been on the show, you've heard the show, we talk about it, and going into a lot of it can pretty much make no sense sometimes when you're like, what the heck, this Airbnb, no offense, like Airbnb policy or whatever, this happened, or this other platform does this, another one that I'm not a big fan of that I won't mention on this episode because I've already given them enough on the last two. But there's a lot of changes that happen and it just doesn't make sense. We don't understand. There's a lot of confusion in it, and it can be frustrating. And I will say that the nice thing that getting to talk to you guys behind the scenes, but also have you share what you shared, is that you do work with the operator. It's not just say the traveler is the end all be all, and we only care about the traveler. We don't care about our partners. We don't care about the inventory on our platform. So to hear you kind of take that approach, I was, really actually excited because it's like, okay, this is going to be a good episode where it's not just going to be like a one-sided conversation where the guest or the traveler is the holy grail, and we're looking at our partners or property managers as kind of just like, you got to do what we say, and if you don't like it, then you can leave. That's been a nice, refreshing approach. So I'm sure Brandy and myself, and even Michael, with all of our properties and the stuff that we do on outside of the show, it does make a big difference to have that approach. So that I will say, Vrbo's, yeah.
And I'll give some props for leaning into it and what is it, eating the frog, whatever that saying is, announcing it right before your annual conference. Like that's a great way to kind of made your life a little bit more hectic during that event, but certainly leaned into the changes and want to make it clear for everybody. So big props for that.
As you can imagine, that was a conversation. It was like, we could do it on this date or that date. And it was just like, we're going to get questions. Let's just throw it out there and then have the conversation.
I definitely,
the right way to do it.
I was at my first ever STR conference was a HomeAway Summit right after some big changes were made, and people were feisty. So I give the whole group credit for that seems to be a trend of we're just going to put this out there and deal with it in person. So definitely props for that.
Yeah, we've had some doozies, I think. And I think from some of that feistiness of a period of time, we've gotten good feedback about how we can do it better too. And then, Will, to your point, I think most operators believe with the statement of when the traveler wins, we all win. But the counterpoint that I think we try to bring as a platform is there's only so many good properties on the beach. There's only so many good properties on the mountain. There's only so many great condos in Miami. There's only so many great castles in Scotland if you're Mike Golden. And then within that subset, there's only so many people that operate those properties that really know what they're doing. And that's really what differentiates, I think, our platform to ultimately drive that travel experience we want.
Yeah. So to summarize the cancellation policy for all the listeners and people that have reached out to us during all of it, basically don't be a bad operator and cancel on people and be shady, and you won't get penaltied and fined. And you can pretty much just work with Vrbo if anything comes up, because at the end of the day,
I think that's
what it sounds like.
Yes, you're right. With, of course, the caveat of we recognize the value of the two-sided marketplace. And if there's valid reasons for cancellation, we got your back.
Awesome.
I love it. Well, thank you, Tim, for joining us right before VRMA. We look forward to seeing you in Orlando and getting to continue to have the conversation, but beyond just this policy, but to, maybe even have you on the podcast for a third time in the future. Can always welcome you back. I know. That's rare. It's a rare one.
Awesome. Looking forward to seeing everybody.
All right.
Great.
Take care.
See ya.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts, Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.